Right, welcome to the second Top Dead Centre channel. We've got the 911 behind us here, and that means one thing, we're working on it again. Today, we're gonna pull the gearbox out of it in preparation to stick a new one in and solve the problem. For those of you that don't know, this was the cheapest Porsche 911 in the country, potentially even the world, that we found when we started Top Dead Centre, our other channel. And now it has developed a nasty gearbox noise, which means we have to take the gearbox out and either get it repaired or replace it with another one. Right, so one of the first things that you have to do after getting, just all the under tray and all of the easy stuff off is get your axles either side off. So these, as you can see up here, power comes through the engine, gearbox chooses what gear you have in, and then it sends power each side through the drive shaft. Obviously, you can't drop the gearbox if they're still attached. So you simply take 6 big bolts out, and then after you've taken them out, you simply undo them and you can pop them out. Now that allows the gearbox to come out. So the next thing for us, pull those gear select cables off, and then we can pull the gearbox out.
And after pulling those cables off, it was time to remove the gearbox, which I did film and you should be seeing right now, but unfortunately, someone else had different plans.
Ben, what happened to the footage of the gearbox coming out of the 911? No, this is for the video. No, this is for the people, because this is going to go in the video. So Ben, I'd like to know, what happened there, Ben?
No press.
No, Ben, what happened there, brother?
There was a big video where we needed all of our cards on our cameras, and I went through, and I was going through card by card, I was rushing, and I may have cleared the wrong card.
I filmed single-handedly pulling the 911 gearbox out, and when I came to look at it, Ben went, what footage? So I'm very, very sorry, but if Ben, hey, I'd just like to...
I'm not sorry.
You're not sorry?
At the time, I was very sorry. I was actually... I was so sorry, I messaged Edwin on my weekend apologising.
So you're saying to the viewers right now you don't care?
No, I care. But it's actually because Edwin never did it.
Tough to see.
Now, before Edwin carries on with the 911, this is a quick reminder that if you are buying a used car, you should always run a car vertical check.
That's right, because every single day, hundreds of cars get crashed, but some of them get repaired and put back on the road, but then they try and hide that dodgy history. With the car vertical check, you can find out that shady past before it catches you out.
Now, all you need is a reg number or a VIN, and then a car vertical report will tell you if that car has been crashed, stolen, or clocked.
Now take, for instance, the TDC 911. If I tried to put this car up for sale and say nothing about its damage, and you ran a car vertical report, you would see right here, damage. And if we click on it and scroll down, it tells us that this was written off as a Cat N car in 2020. So you would know that I would be lying. What a clown I am.
Now, if we look at this Volkswagen Touareg, we can see we've got yellow markers for finance and damage. And if we scroll down, we've even got photos of that damage. But if we click on damage, we can see that this car actually passed an inspection in Poland 5 years ago, despite being marked as a Cat B in the UK. Now, Cat B means this legally cannot go back on the road. So someone has exported it to another country, hidden that past, and then tried to put it up for sale. But with a car vertical report, you can find out this shady history.
So the next time that you're buying a car, van, or motorbike, make sure that you don't buy a written off 911 because you'll hate yourself. But more importantly, run a car vertical check to make sure the price you pay for it matches its history.
And as an added bonus, Car Vertical are offering you guys 20% off when you use our code 2DC.
I'm joined by Andrew. Andrew, thank you very much for coming. Because Andrew may be the saviour for our original gearbox. I hadn't decided to chuck our original gearbox in the bin just yet because Andrew got in contact and said, hold on, there's a chance we might be able to save it. So you have worked not necessarily on this gearbox that much, but lots of Porsche gearboxes.
Yep, so we worked on the G50s when I was back at Hewland, so they are fairly similar, slightly different.
Andrew's gonna not just help, but also probably supervise most of my work.
The first order of business was to pull one of the plugs off the original gearbox, but that alone proved to be very difficult.
Ooh bugger.
Oh no.
So effectively this is holding in the selector mechanism detent, and we need that to be a bit floppy to access to get the actual main housing off. So we're going to have to think of a way to get this out.
And the way that we came up with was to hammer a larger socket into the stripped thread, heat it until it was glowing hot, and pray that it would come loose.
Come on.
Straight away.
Tell you what, bit of heat, and she's meant.
Bit of hammering, bit of heat. What more could you ask for?
With that off, it was time to pull the end cap off of the gearbox to see exactly what the issue was. But yet again, we hit a problem. A snap bolt was stopping us from lifting the cap off, so we had to get creative. Welding, drilling, and hammering all wouldn't work. But then...
There we go.
There you go. Yeah, go for it.
That is filthy.
And the magnet, which picks up any of those broken parts, wasn't much better.
Look at your magnet. That's a lot of filings.
That's a chunk as well.
Oh, is that a chunk?
That is a chunk.
That is a chunk. Ooh. Oh, that's heavy. So that bit of metal is broken out of a spacer.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Okay, yeah.
In all honesty, isn't the be-all and end-all, because you can get a new spacer. So we've got movement in the shafts. It indicates either the pinion bearing has gone or the input shaft bearing. So effectively, the two gears are clashing, and that is your machining noise. So, scrap. You could use parts, but I think we've established that just one gear set is £700.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well, at least we know now that this gearbox, he's not for this world. Thank you both for your efforts in getting the casing off. Right, it might feel like just moments for you watching, but in reality, months have passed because I had to go and find a new gearbox. Here is our old one, and here is our new one, a little bit more dirty. That's because this gearbox has been in storage for like 8 or 9 years. This came out of a pretty low mileage car. It has been checked, supposedly. Everything looks to be okay, but there is one difference. This is an open diff car. So he doesn't have the nice LSD that this one had.
Our original 911 has an incredibly rare limited slip differential gearbox, or LSD, which means it sends power to both wheels equally, giving you better traction and allowing you to do proper burnouts and skids. The new gearbox has the much more common open differential, which sends power to whichever wheel has the least resistance, meaning weak looking burnouts and not very controllable skids. So we began by draining all of the oil in the new gearbox and getting the old differential ready to be removed.
But with Andrew, we should be able to take the good bit of this and stick it in this one and have a working gearbox and then chuck it back in the 911. There isn't a little...
I think there's oil.
Perfect, great, good to see. So gearbox oil draining, and that's the colour that it should have been, really.
Yes, nice and clear.
Yeah.
Still smells awful.
That is still oil. The stuff we took out, that was water.
Right, so let's have a look inside this thing then.
Ooh.
Oh, for a start, it's silver, which is good.
It's not supposed to be black and sludgy?
But not supposed to be black and sludgy.
What the hell?
No. But look at that, the actual sides of the casing
Silver
are
as well.
Silvery clean.
So you're happy for us to...
I'm happy for us to use this gearbox, stick the diff in, and basically send it.
Now that is a result for a completely unknown gearbox that I paid cash money for, so we're lucky there, but now we've got to stick the diff in and swap everything over.
Andrew began by tearing down everything in between us and the differential, removing the stub axles, differential cover, and then finally removing the weak open differential.
So obviously the difference is at the moment we've obviously stripped out the LSD for the moment so we can rebuild it, but this one is currently missing its crown wheel. You'll also notice the actual diff body is quite larger on the LSD. On your normal open diff, it's a smaller housing. That's because in a normal diff, there is no friction plates. The plates act as a clutch and they stop you producing some wheel spin, and therefore the power will then go to your other wheel, turning both wheels so that you get back on the road.
So basically we're missing all of those plates, the ones that we're going to replace, the ones that were worn out from before.
That had no material left on them whatsoever.
And because they act like clutches, they do exactly what a clutch does when you burn it out. Once your clutch is gone, it doesn't work anymore. It won't transmit power to both wheels, so it will just go to the path of least resistance, like an open diff. So by rebuilding this LSD with the new plates, we can bring back that proper LSD action and get both wheels spinning.
To do that, we would need the very specific thickness shims which live under the silver bearings at the top and bottom of the differential, which meant the very time-consuming process of pulling those bearings.
So one side came off quite nicely. We got the shim right here.
Good.
He's
There's
all happy.
the shim.
However, this one, he does not want to come off where he lives.
But the main thing we want to save from this differential is the shims.
Is that guy right there?
Is that boy right there. This is important because if you put in the wrong shims, then you can either have your bearings heat up with too much force on them or too little force and they will explode.
So what we've done is I've gone ahead and I've ordered another one of these bearings. Even though we got this one off, I've ordered another one of those, and this one that we're going to have to cut up, I've ordered a new one of those. Kind of fresh start, replace them both, they'll be okay.
That was probably a good job we were replacing that bearing.
He's not so happy?
No, you can just see on that race, it's just starting to pick up.
Oh yeah.
On the inner race, all the way around, it's jittering. And that is the sign of a bearing that is on its way out.
Glad that we had ordered new bearings, Andrew pulled the last one off to access the shim underneath it.
But now that we've got that, that is all this diff was used for, right? That's all we kind of need this
That's
diff
all.
for.
That is all we need off this. Is those two. That can go where all non-LSD diffs should be going.
Bin.
To the bin.
We then removed the bearings from the LSD in the same way, ready to swap them out for our open diff shims and chuck the new bearings on.
Right, so we've just removed the bearing from our LSD gearbox, basically this on the other side. That one is from the new gearbox, and you can now see, if we look at the shim size between them, so he's 3.85 mil.
This one is 2.1.
Tiny.
So that is one of the reasons why you need to check, because every gearbox is different.
Hello.
Hello,
What are you doing?
I clean.
He cleans. So Robin from Viking Detail happened to be here working on another thing, and he said, can I clean your gearboxes? This, we have covered up any hole. As you can see, there's all sorts of microfibers in there, and there's some metal holding it away so you can't get any water in there. So that when I am inevitably laying on my back trying to push this gearbox in by myself, I won't be covered in dirt, which is always nice.
Robin, what have you cooked for us today?
Right, well, we've got a gearbox, the side of the gearbox.
Oh, I like that.
This is actually, I've made a deconstructed gearbox here. Yeah.
I was waiting for that to
There
come.
you go,
Yeah,
it's got-
we saw it coming. Look
Yeah.
how good that looks. So
Thanks,
this is now going to become a prop for the podcast. He will sit on the podcast looking nice.
I think we need somehow you need to get the like a gear knob on here so that we can change gears whilst you're on the podcast. So
This is looking lovely. That looks 10 times better.
yeah, it was pretty horrible to be honest.
Thank you very much, Robin.
Nice.
Well, we've got to put the rest of the gearbox together, and I'll send you a photo when it's in.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the next day, and Andrew has taken home the LSD to stick on the new bearings. It's a good thing we did this as well, because in replacing the bearings, here's the old one. See all the way along there on the inside of that. See the pitting along there? So that's all swapped over. So now we have all of the bearings and the shims from the non-LSD. And you said that the spacing is fine, it looks
The
correct.
spacing is fine. It looks correct. I did loads of measurements last night.
Now, here's a very crucial part, because you might remember that when we were taking the diff apart, we found lots of the old plates, the clutch plates, which is what gives you power to both sides, and they were completely mashed. So I rang up a company called Racing Diffs, who make replacement clutch plates, and these clutch plates fit in 993 turbos, 996 turbos, and our diff right here. Mega shout out to Racing Diffs. Thank you very much for sending them over. Take it apart and replace all of these shims
And give it a good clean.
and give it, hey man, you don't need to sell me on that.
So we took the insides of our old LSD apart, cleaning as we went, ready to stick the new uprated clutch plates inside, courtesy of Racing Diffs.
Right, this might look like hell. Along this line, we have all of the old components, one side of the diff. The other side of the diff, this is our old one that we showed you before that has the friction plate, basically nothing left, it's smooth. And then this is one of the new Racing Diffs friction plate. So the steel spacers are here as well. And then we're also, instead of these, we're gonna get rid of this kind of spacer and chuck in one of the other clutch plates, because they send 4 with the kit. Technically, you'd only use 2, with another one of the dog ear rings, which you say would make the clutch.
It will
which
increase the LSD-ness.
I don't know I could ever complain less. So I'm very happy with that. So now is a case of now whacking it all together, putting the LSD together as a unit, sticking back in the gearbox. So we start with this one?
No, other end.
Great, we start with this one? Perfect.
I knew that if I had a go at touching this, I would somehow end up writing the car off. So I left Andrew to do what he does and put the internals of the LSD together properly.
Right, Andrew has put the whole thing together, and you'll notice that I said that he's done it, not I, because if I had have done it, this wouldn't have gone back together. The next thing is actually a bit of a challenge. This needs to go on there, and he's not going to want to go on there by himself, is he?
No, so we need to bolt the end cap on,
Yep.
and then we're going to have to heat up the crown wheel so that we can drop it over the body and then get the bolts in before it grips.
Okay. In the air fryer. We are going to air fry the crown wheel. Ooh. Now, Ben, do you think... I think we go max crisp.
It'll come out a nice golden brown,
Lovely.
smelling beautiful.
And if you do want any condiments, we do have mayo, we have some Rostov Blue Ice, which is for contracting bolts, or we have some
Peronaise.
Nando's Peronaise.
While part of the LSD was crisping up in the air fryer, we encountered a problem. The new clutch plates were too tall and wouldn't fit as we had arranged them. So Andrew rejigged the plates and it now fit perfectly, just in time for lunch.
Oh, that smells lovely, Ben. Just gonna get a smell. Just get a smell on that.
All crispy.
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 The reason we have to heat it up is because it is such a tight tolerance on there that if you try and put it on cold, it just won't sit on there. So you heat it up so it expands, plop him on, and then as he contracts, he will go and sit in his place. But we have to flip it upside down and put all the bolts in. Right, while we let this cool down, we've just decided to quickly build up the other bits for the transmission. Here, started cleaning this up, and then remembered I bought a new one. So we've got brand new release bearing as well. This is an upgraded one, more importantly. A lightened flywheel. Ooh, I'm excited for this. And this came from RPM Technic. Not only did we take our 924 from previous unnamed job to them, we also borrowed the wheels off them for the 911 series. This is what they run on their CSR 911s, which are renowned to be one of the best 996s. So this could be good.
After covering the crown wheel's teeth in special engineering pigment, which tells you how well the two surfaces will mate together, it was time for the final test to see if this gearbox was going to work.
Andrew's put the bolts in, and look, if I turn the clutch, he turns from out there. That means the LSD, he's operating as he should. Turn this around a load of times so we can engage all the teeth.
Beautiful spread all the way across.
It's time to put it back together.
It's time to properly get it back in that Porsche.
Oh, yes! So, there it is, from start to finish. I think it's kind of clear, you've probably seen, everyone watching from this has kind of realised we would have broken this if we had have tried to do this. If we tried to rebuild this diff, there wouldn't be a gearbox left. But because of Andrew, we now have a gearbox together. Whether or not it works is up to me. Andrew, thank you very, very much.
No,
I appreciate it more than you know. Let's stick this gearbox in the engine and we'll see what happens. Now, while you didn't see me take the gearbox out of the 911 because of the unfortunate circumstances of Ben, you are going to see me put it back in. But more importantly, after months and months of waiting, the 911 is back up on the ramp. I'm going to put the 911 box in, get it all working, and hope that it solves the issue and we get this car back on the road. But before we do that, we have to do some more stuff under the car. As you can see, this is the engine with our old flywheel, old pressure plate, all of that sort of stuff, and we need to take it off. But something you might notice, and it was in the footage of removing it, is the engine actually drops down quite a lot onto the subframe. So that's why I've got this jack here. If we start just pumping them up, you will see, there we go, there the engine starts to lift up. We'll leave it just about there. Now what we need to do is take out all of these bolts that hold the flywheel and pressure plate on, and doing that is going to allow us to find out something that we have never ever known about this car, and it's the biggest issue that happens with Porsche 911s.
The 996 is known for one thing: IMS failure. The intermediate shaft runs through the engine to help maintain the timing chain life. But what it's instead known to do is fail, causing catastrophic engine failure. People usually upgrade their IMS to prevent the ticking time bomb, but because we bought our 911 from a scrapyard, we had no service history to show it's ever been done, and the only way to find out is removing the clutch to see the back of the engine.
So just behind this plate back here, we will see if it has an original IMS bearing or if it maybe has one of the upgraded ones. And if it has one of the upgraded ones, we never need to worry. But if it doesn't, I'm going to run the risk and we're going to leave it original and just see what happens. So let's take this clutch off and see what we can see.
The old clutch and pressure plate didn't like coming out. Perhaps sitting outside for months with no gearbox wasn't the best for it, but after some penetrating fluid, it all came out fine and it was time to assess the IMS bearing.
We've just pulled off the old parts, and this is your IMS bearing down here, and it looks to be the original one. It hasn't been changed. Now, yes, I know that I probably should have taken right about now to change the IMS bearing, but there's a good reason why I'm not going to, because I don't mind that much if this engine decides to die. If it decides to die, that is on its own terms, because if it does die, this engine will be going, and perhaps one with a few more cylinders might go in instead. More importantly, this is your rear main seal. I will change this out because it's kind of pointless not to, and then up at the top here, that's your starter motor. When you turn your key, it sends a signal to this. The heat pops out and spins. The teeth on your flywheel here is what kicks the engine into life and starts it spinning. And looking at our older parts we've taken off the engine, you can see a lot of heat scoring on the faces here. And that's going to be from dumping the clutch, maybe doing a couple too many burnouts that, oh well, who could have known we'd do that? And over here on the clutch, it's not fully dead, but it's not in the best condition. It's time for a change. And that's where the cool new parts come in. This whole setup here is original to 911s. However, this setup here is quite a bit upgraded. You'll notice if I show you this clutch versus this clutch, they're quite different. This is an unsprung clutch versus a sprung clutch here. And the reason that we have to change to that is because of our lightened flywheel. The weight of this is 3 times the amount of weight of this flywheel. And the effect that that will have on driving is that it's much slower to rev up and down. When you change gear, it will go back down to revs.
Excited to get my new parts installed, I stuck the new lightened flywheel, clutch and pressure plate all into the car.
And there we have it, the fully installed lightened flywheel and clutch package. So, it's the moment of truth. It's now time to get that gearbox up on one of the transmission jacks, see if I can manhandle it into this car, and hope and pray that I've lined that clutch up correctly so that the snout of the input shaft goes into the clutch correctly. I can only hope. It's time to see. Yes, by the way, I am fully aware that this is not a very smart idea. Oh well, play where the ball lies. So far so good. Off we go. We're just going for a walk, little transmission. Come on, mate.
Now, I've pulled and fitted dozens of transmissions in my life, and they are always a pain. But this gearbox went in smoother than any other I've ever dealt with. It was like the 911 was finally excited to get back on the road again.
Oh, we've only gone and done it. We are in. This moment has felt years away at every single moment. Even this morning I thought there's no way I get this gearbox to engage, but I think it's in. Now I have a feeling this footage might have been deleted in the great Carl of Ben. Whenever I take gearbox bolts out, I put them in the order and in a kind of diagram of how they came out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going all the way around, coming back to the beginning.
Thanking previous Edwin for being organised for once, I bolted up the transmission, connected the shifter cables, and got ready to see if all of this work had paid off.
Right, it's time for a big moment. I'm already quite excited. I'm already quite pleased with myself. There we go. This one. Out. Your service was appreciated, but is no longer needed. Now, yes, I'm fully aware that I probably should have started it and tried to run it through the gears in the air, but this is TDC. There's no room for guesswork like that. We're either all in or we're nothing. So, start this up and see if it will move.
After 6 months, it was time to finally get the TDC 911 back on the road.
Hello, old girl. Don't start, gearbox. I'm gonna pull off the battery jumper. We're gonna see if it drives. Come on, please. All of the time, all of the money. It moves. It moves. The 911 runs again. Honestly, for me, that might be the best result we've had. For the amount of money that this should have cost to repair and what we've just done it for, and to keep the LSD, which remains to be seen, that's amazing. And there we have it. The 911 moves under its own power yet again. Let's wait till tomorrow morning when Will's here and we can see how it drives on the road. It's the next day. You should be joining myself and Will behind the camera in the car, happy, gleeful, zesty, as it were. But instead, the 911's on the lift. Because just after I cut that last clip, I thought, you know what, I gotta have my cake and eat it too. I'm gonna go out for a quick drive, just down the road and back. And the moment I got onto the road, I thought, that's a weird noise. That sounds kind of like the noise from before, but it can't be. I changed it up and the noise got louder. I changed it up and the noise got louder. Yeah, there's a pretty serious rattle coming from the gearbox. Worse than before. So, Andrew is back, just as disappointed and annoyed as I am. We're gonna pull the oil out the box, check there's no sparkly metal shavings in it. So we're gonna see if we can find out what it is and if there's an issue that we can solve semi-quickly. If not, this guy's got a little bit of a journey ahead of him still. Oh. All right, mate, all right, calm it down. Big night at the pub. Well, I mean, I can't see anything.
It's not bitty.
No, I mean, the other thing to know, I did drive it maximum of a quarter mile. Not gonna have chunks and chunks, but even for the amount of noise that I heard, there's nothing on a straightaway level that goes, uh-oh. You know what it is? It's cars. This is liquid cars. Right, let's get that diff out, have a look.
So Andrew and I started by removing the diff, which logically has to be the issue, as it's the only thing that we have touched in an otherwise original gearbox.
There we go. One differential.
One differential, there we go. That was nice, that was quick work. Right, so Andrew, you've had a look at the diff, and there's nothing that kind of suggests that there should be any noise at all.
As the noise is through every gear, it would put it down to the final drive assembly as such.
So the plan now is we're going to put the cover back on the diff. We're going to leave the diff out, potentially run the car up and just see if we can hear the noise without a diff. Because if there's no noise without the diff, then we know it probably is that. If there's still a noise, we know it's in the gearbox. Right, Andrew has now put the diff casing back on with no diff inside it. We filled up some gearbox fluid so that we can turn it over without it munching the gearbox. And now I'm going to start it up and we're going to see if we can still hear that noise with no diff. If the noise is gone, we know it's something in that LSD, which is hopeful. We're hoping that there's no noise now.
gearbox.
That's the gearbox.
We just started the car up with no drive shafts connected and no LSD in the car. Basically meaning that the only noise that could come from anywhere is the new gearbox. What it looks like right now is that the gamble that I took with the new gearbox hasn't paid off. There is an issue in that new gearbox, and that's no one's fault but mine. I decided to go for the cheap option to see if I could make something work, and I got stung by it. So, unfortunately, you will not be seeing the 911 drive in this episode because we have to pull the gearbox out again, which Andrew has kindly enough said just off camera. Go on then, let's pull the gearbox out. So, massive thank you again to him. Thank you very much for watching, and tune in, perhaps not next time, but soon when we do get this car going. End of that last clip. You thought it was all doom and gloom. You thought that was the end of the video. Psych, this is TDC. Mr. President, there has been a third gearbox. You can tell by that, the number 3. Got to keep track of them these days. Andrew found this. Literally, we pulled the gearbox last week. I went home, cried, and while crying, Andrew went, "See this? There's a gearbox on eBay. It seems okay." We haven't yet checked it. Basically, the last gearbox that I bought, I couldn't really go back to the old seller because we'd taken the diff out of it, we'd changed the crown wheel, we've messed with it. I wouldn't want to take that gearbox back. It's been apart 1,000 times. So the deal with this one is that if we put this gearbox in, as it sits, we'll change the fluid, but that's it. Just chuck it in and it makes a bad noise. Johnny, who's a very nice guy, subscriber, he watched the channel, he said he'll take it back. So props to Johnny for being a genuine seller. But if it works, this guy, he lives with the car now. And it doesn't need to be perfect. I just want this car to work now. As long as I'm not hearing Armageddon behind me, we're running this gearbox.
So for the second time, we pulled the gearbox out of the car, fitted the new parts to the new one, and put it back in, sure that there couldn't be any more issues with this old 911.
Right, the gearbox is in. But of course there's another problem. You see, the gearbox that we bought, Johnny did tell me on the phone, he said, just so you know, it's got the push type gear selector. And I went, yeah, that's what I've got. I got the push type. No, I don't. I don't have the push type. You can see here on the selector, I'll show it to you here, this here has just a straight kind of pin. Whereas the one that we had on our old gearbox was like a ball. So you pop the ball over into this little circular bit and it goes, and he sits on there. Whereas this guy, he just sits on there. It technically isn't the right gearbox, and you can't just swap that off. You have to take the whole gearbox apart to do that. Andrew and I, we're not doing that. We're not letting this defeat us. So Andrew's had a very good idea, which is we can drill through this bit here, pop him over so that this part goes through, and then you can see there's a little space for a circlip here. We'll pop him over and through, circlip or something on the other side to hold it, and those shifter cables, they better be shifting, otherwise that's their problem, because we're not running it again. So we are so very close. The only thing that we're going to do is just drain the oil and swap in some new fresh oil. Other than that, we're not going to touch it, so we can just hear if this gearbox is good. I know Johnny's probably watching right now, praying that it is. Don't worry, Johnny. We're hoping the best.
So after a quick fluid flush, it was time yet again to see if the 911 would live.
For the second time in this video, let's see if the gearbox works. Right, so for the first run through, like what we did when we checked the gearbox before, we're just going to leave it in the air, start it, run it through the gears, and check that there's no nasty noises.
Something's not right. It has to be something to do with the starter on that flywheel.
Stick it down on the ground and we'll rock it.
Yeah?
The 911 had now developed a new issue. It didn't want to start up, no matter how many batteries or jumper packs we put on it. So we decided to bump start it.
I mean, we're not out of the woods, but should we throw a GoPro in here and I'll go down the road and we'll see if gearbox number 3, if what's behind door number 3 is the correct gearbox.
This is a moment of truth.
So we're looking for silence.
We're looking for not hearing noises. We're driving.
Nothing.
Seconds there. Third. There's... It has to be in the engine. It has to be in the engine. It has to be in the engine.
Three gearboxes.
It can't.
Is that the same noise?
It's the same noise. It can't be in the gearbox. It can't. No, man.
Is that in all the gears it does that?
Put it fifth. Well, looks like potentially we're 3 for 3. I'll see you in the next video on this car where we try and work out what has gone wrong. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week. Maybe not though.